So we just got some pretty bullish news in regards to Tesla stock, and in this video I want to go ahead and provide an update on where Tesla stock is likely headed to next. Now, if you're not familiar with the channel, my name is Justin. I make commentary on the market. I've been featured on Bazinga, Bankrate, Yahoo Finance, and several other financial outlets, as well as I recently just completed level 1 of the Chartered Market Technician program. So, just kind of letting you know that I'm someone that follows the market pretty often. And yesterday I made a video for Tesla, and I mentioned that Tesla stock just got the best news today. And what pretty much I talked about in yesterday's video was more on the side of the macroeconomic perspective, right? Just because, I share the charts in my videos doesn't mean that that's the only thing I focus on. I focus on the fundamentals, and I focus on monetary policy, etc. And so yesterday, unless you were living under a rock, and maybe you have been, because sometimes we're not all being aware of what's going on with the boring stuff in the world, but we had the inflationary gauge of CPI, Consumer Price Index, came out, and what we saw was that it came in line with inflation expectations. So inflation is still high, but it's not running at an accelerated rate. And so that likely solidified the idea that in 5 days, we're going to have the Federal Reserve cut rates by 25 basis points, which is a huge plus for Tesla. And that's why we saw Tesla stock pretty much jump. Now, yesterday in that video, I mentioned that, look, I don't have exposure to Tesla anymore, but I recently got into TSLL. Now, if you don't know what TSLL is, it's the double leverage ETF for Tesla. So if Tesla does, let's say, 1%, this is going to move up 2%, right? And so yesterday's video, I talked about how I opened a position, and it actually, because Tesla went up 6% today, this position actually went up a little over 12% for today. Now, I did close that position after it went up 12% in one day, and I don't want anyone to say, Justin, but if you're bullish on Tesla, why did you close that? I want to kind of, make it very aware why I closed that position. So for those of you guys that are not familiar with, these leveraged ETFs, you don't want to hold them for a long duration of time, simply because there's something called time decay, where when you hold these ETFs and if the stock moves sideways, you end up kind of just having a loss. Right? And so you kind of want to stay away from leverage ideally, right? And so I knew that, Tesla stock likely was going to continue on this momentum. And so I said, look, instead of just holding Tesla and just moving up 6%, let me do the double leverage ETF and get to 12%. Now, that I know I was going to do 6% exactly, not 100%, but I knew the momentum was there. So I exit that position, and I'm likely to go ahead and, go into regular Tesla shares. And I want to go ahead and talk about, well, where do I see Tesla stock going to next? Because in my previous videos, right, I mentioned how there was this idea of Tesla stock going to $380, and then from there I was going to reevaluate. Now, we actually blew far past that. We're actually, at the time of this recording, up $394. And so the question is, well, where's Tesla stock going to go next? Now, of course, I don't have a crystal ball. Right? Yes. Have I been right on Tesla a multitude of different times in my commentary and all these videos? Yeah, but I don't have a crystal ball. But I want to share what are some things that I'm going to be looking at for Tesla, right? Now, real quick, before we actually talk about that, just a friendly reminder, if you haven't done so already, check out the links in the description below, because one of the links is going to be a link to join my free weekly market post insights. Guys, it's free. Every single week I send out an email of what's going on in the market. So definitely check that out, right? It's different from the Push and Profit Research Insider Group. This newsletter essentially is completely free, and you get updates on the market. You get a ton of value. So definitely check that out. All I ask for is the email. But with that said, I want to share something, right? So we had Farzad, right? And if you don't know who he is someone who makes a lot of content on Tesla, both on X and also on YouTube. He's essentially a Tesla influencer, and that's kind of all he talks about. Some people may say, Justin, you're a Tesla influencer because that's all you talk about. Not the case. I just noticed that there's more interest in Tesla from the retail perspective. So, and I tend to follow Tesla and kind of scale in and out, but that's not my whole portfolio, right? Some of these Tesla influencers, they put all their money in Tesla, right? Which I'm not a big fan, right? Like I'm more on the side of Warren Buffett. Hey, let's have a concentration because Warren Buffett, I think he mentioned something along the lines of like diversification. Too much diversification is just ignorance, right? But we won't go ahead and delve into the topic. What I want to share is that Farzad recently tweeted to Gary Black. Now, if you don't know who Gary Black is, he's this fund manager, Harvard graduate. He has a future fund. And Gary Black used to be very bullish on Tesla until last year, right? And then he kind of shifted away. So Farzad, this Tesla influencer, said, "Hey Gary Black, let me know which snarky comment you have in the chamber for me, because the next few years look pretty terrible for your thesis." And he goes ahead and he shares this 1-year chart for Tesla, right? Now, he compares it to Uber because Gary Black has exited his position on Tesla around $350, and he's in Uber, right? Now, this is honestly not a fair chart to share because Farzad is showing the 1-year chart, but you have to look at the year-to-date chart, right? Because year-to-date, Tesla really is only up 3% year-to-date, versus Uber year-to-date is up a significant amount. I think it's up about 50% last time I checked. Oh, look at that. Now it's 4%. Tesla's still pushing up. Great. At the time of this recording. But, if you look at the year-to-date, yeah, Tesla's up 70%, but also we have to consider that Gary Black and his fund, they were bullish on Tesla last year. It wasn't until 2025 when they exited out of Tesla and rotated into different positions. And that's kind of the same kind of area that I'm at, right? Because I've been bullish on Tesla in the past, but recently I said, look, fundamentally, there's a lot of other options out there, right? For example, I shared one of the trade ideas for those within the insider group, right? CLS. I mean, I didn't catch the full move. Right now, CLS, I think I'm up 16% on this. But year to date, CLS is up over 100%, right? So there's definitely other opportunities in the market aside from Tesla. And so, I just wanted to share that because I thought that was unfair for this other, YouTube influencer to kind of talk to, and I'm not defending Gary Black. I could care less about, really his perspective. But, it's kind of unfair, right? Because when you really look at things, Tesla's only up 4% of the year versus, you could look at the S&P 500 and it's beating Tesla, right? Someone who just put their money in the index fund is beating Tesla, right? Not to say that, hey, in the last couple of months of the year, right? We're in September, we have October, November, December, 3 more months. Can Tesla outperform? Yeah. And, that's not out of the realm of possibility, especially what we have here with the exciting news of Tesla landing regulatory green light for robotaxi in a new state. Right, so now Tesla is going to have a third state where robotaxi is going to be operating, and this is after Texas and California. So this is great news because, of course, we want to see FSD continuing to scale, especially if you're bullish on the idea of fully self-driving. And so that's honestly one of the catalysts for Tesla, alongside with the monetary aspect of monetary policy, making it more affordable for cars. Because remember, in yesterday's video that I talked about, I shared how, look, interest rates are high. And even for myself, someone who's a super prime borrower with a credit score of 830, right? I don't have a perfect credit score, but I'm up there. It's still 5% to finance a new car. Now, if you have a credit score of 600, which I talked about from my anecdotal experience of being a banker many years ago, right? Not that long. I lose track. 4 years ago, right? And I was working in an affluent area. Most people, the credit scores are kind of like around 600, right? And even people who have, I remember seeing people who had $500,000 in their savings account and they had poor credit score, right? So just want to put it out there. There's people with money who have poor credit, right? And what I'm trying to say is that if you're a subprime borrower, interest rates to finance a car are almost as high as 15%. That is absurd, right? And so with the idea of, hey, robotaxi scaling, we're likely to have monetary policy get less restrictive. That's all bullish for Tesla. But we also got more bullish news. And don't worry, we're going to go ahead and touch on where I think Tesla is going to go. I think what I'm trying to do is just share all the background context to really understand my perspective, right? Now, by the way, if you found any value in today's video so far, just make sure to hit that like button. It really does help out with the channel. But I want to also highlight something else that's pretty interesting, right? Because we had this news here that Tesla's chair, recently said Elon Musk has completed his political service, essentially saying, look, he's finito. He is done with his political kind of I'm trying to think of the right words here, that's not the wrong way to say this, but political affiliations. Right now, if this is true, this is huge, right? This is great, because we've talked about how Elon Musk has gotten himself into trouble kind of delving into politics, and I'm not saying what he's saying is wrong or right. We're ignoring that, right? The truth is, delving into politics can be a very dangerous area. And I think it's safe to say that it's a dangerous, that's kind of honestly funny to say. It's safe to say how dangerous it is. But I share that because we recently had Charlie Kirk, right? And we're not going to talk about your views on him, right? We're not going to delve into that. But this was a political influencer who was recently eliminated, right? Which is actually something that the chair mentioned. She didn't mention Elon Musk and Charlie Kirk, but she did mention that Elon Musk needs to have more security. And it kind of makes sense, right? When you're talking about politics these days, you have to be very careful, right? You have to be very careful. And that's not to say, hey, you can't talk about politics, but it's just saying, hey, it's a dangerous world out there. So her saying, and I want to kind of get back on tangent, but her saying that he's completed his political service, well, this likely means that we're going to have Elon Musk who's not so involved. And that's a plus for the Tesla brand, but it's also a plus for Elon, as we just talked about how dangerous it is and people are getting eliminated. And, it'd be terrible for Tesla stock to have Elon Musk, gone, right? And so that's something we want to be mindful of. Those are great news, great details. Now, let's go ahead and go back to Tesla, right? Wow, this thing is still going up. $395.99. It hit a high. It's amazing. So where do I think Tesla stock is likely headed? I want to see Tesla at $412, which is not too far away. Honestly, that is just another 6%. But from there, right, I think we have to kind of pull back on the optimism. And I know someone's going to say, but Justin, you don't think Tesla could hit new all-time highs? It's in the possibilities, but we also have to understand, yes, we're seeing developments with monetary policy, we're seeing developments with FSD, but fundamentally, we have to understand that tax credits are disappearing, and it's kind of still a challenging time for the consumer, right? Now, we're going to have it a bit less challenging with less restrictive rates, but I also want to share something here that we got today, which was consumer sentiment. It hit its 4-month low in September as middle-income Americans worry about jobs. Look, the job market is looking horrendous right now, right? Unemployment is at its highest level since after the pandemic, and this is not good. This is honestly not good. When consumer sentiment is low like this, the consumer who's likely going to be purchasing these consumer discretionary products like Tesla vehicles or services from Tesla like FSD, well, if they feel pressure, that's not a good sign, right? A stock is like Tesla, right, that obviously sells to consumers, is going to be successful in an environment when the consumer is successful. But let's be honest, right? Maybe you're in a good place watching this. Maybe you're in a decent place. But there's a lot of people, unfortunately, and it almost makes me want to, it makes me sad. There's a lot of people that are in a very difficult place in this time in America. And of course, hopefully things look optimistic going forward, but we're going to have to pay attention to the job market. And so I think Tesla still has some juice, some room to go higher that this area, and I'm pointing to this area because that's where we have more volume relative to price. That's where we have more trading activity between the buyers and the sellers. So that's where we see kind of supports and resistances develop. That's where we see kind of consolidation. So that's kind of where I think Tesla is going to go. But just remind yourself, there's other opportunities, right? I had a great trade with TSLL. And now I'm going to be likely rotating back to Tesla. But there's a lot of other great names that are doing extraordinary numbers right now, right? So don't be limited. Make sure to manage your portfolio. And by the way, don't trade based on what I say. Always trade and invest in whatever you see value in. But with that said, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Remember to check out the link to join the free weekly Market Pulse Insights. Again, it's the first link in the description below. I'll pin it in the comment section, and I'll see you guys on this next video right over here. Take care, guys.